All right. How's it going, everybody? Um, it is noon. Hopefully, you're having a great lunch. If you're here live, post in the chat what you're eating. I want to say thanks to everybody who showed up last night to our. Wasn't so much a game night, and I told Brian that I wasn't. There were some games we could have played. People weren't as excited about playing games. I just wanted to see people. Jaden and Peyton were there. Jasmine, Ethan were there. Brian showed up. Sammy was there. Hopefully, we can do that a few more times throughout the month, and hopefully more people will show up. Especially since Zoom has basically waived their pay. Like, if for free, you can have to 100 people, but it's for 40 minutes. But Zoom has waived that right now during the coronavirus thing. So take advantage of that. Also, one of the things that since we're looking at a month more, another 4 weeks, I'm trying to think about how could we have virtual youth group, maybe through Zoom on Wednesday nights normally when we would have youth group, but having them and then. But I would like to get more participation if that's possible. So we would need to get the word out pretty quickly. I don't think I'll do that this Wednesday because that's tomorrow, and I want to have enough time to let people know more than maybe because maybe some people didn't show up yesterday because they were it was kind of short notice. It wasn't that short notice, but I didn't advertise it as much as I could have. So let's maybe shoot for next Wednesday, not tomorrow, but next Wednesday, having like a youth group, virtual group, or whatever. Yeah, something just bugged out on me. All right. Anyways, so today, couple things from one thing that I wanted to mention from yesterday, I guess, that before we get started for today's devotional is one of the things that I saw. It wasn't a meme, but it was like a message on Facebook. Somebody posted that if you don't have another skill learned by the end of this thing, then you've wasted your time. If you think about it, this is the 4th week of the quarantine. There's going to be another 3 weeks after this one, so there's like 7 weeks of you being at your house, not being allowed to do a lot of things. And it would be kind of crazy if you walked out of this basically only being super knowledgeable about specific TV shows rather than having some new skill, new knowledge about something. And we talked about that. Brian and I talked about that a little bit last Thursday, bringing up, you can watch documentaries, you can start studying specific topics in history. But one of the things that I want to encourage you, especially since we're in Passion Week, is that this is a really great time to be still and know God. The Bible talks about that, be still and know that I am God, verse, I believe, in Psalms. And this is just you are forced to be still. You are forced to kind of stop the grind, stop the busyness of life. And this is an opportunity for you to really get in touch with God better, more, have your faith grow. And I want to encourage you that, especially during Passion Week, it's a great reminder that you got the month of April to really be like, I'm going to focus on my relationship with God. I want to know more about Him. And this isn't just a plug for being here at noon for devotionals. It's for you to take this time seriously about getting to know God. And imagine how amazing if nationally everybody just took this month to really get to know God better and to either start their faith journey with God, looking to Jesus as their Messiah, or as believers becoming more and more in love, falling more and more in love with Jesus this month. So I want to encourage you guys on that note. So today is Tuesday, right? Yeah, Tuesday. And we're looking at each day, sort of going through what was Jesus doing on Monday? What was he doing on Tuesday? And today is actually one of the busier days of the week. It's not the busiest day; that'd be Thursday, but Thursday, Friday, I guess. but Tuesday was a very busy day, and we're going to be looking at Mark chapter 12, and to introduce a little bit what's going on during this on Tuesday. Jesus went head to head more or less with the Pharisees, and in very specific, like, this is it. This is time for me to do my purpose, to live out my purpose on the earth. And I got to get this thing rolling. I got to get the ball rolling on this. And so, in some ways, as you read through the passage, we're not going to read the entire chapter, but Jesus is in a little ways picking a fight. It's kind of like I don't know if you have ever seen the movie Braveheart. There's a scene in Braveheart where he literally is about to go meet some British soldiers, and he goes, "I'm going to go pick." Like somebody asks him, "Where are you going?" And he goes, "I'm going to pick a fight." And he goes and he talks trash to these guys, and eventually makes it so that it's impossible for them to turn a fight down because William Wallace wanted the fight. I'm not going to say Jesus talked trash per se, but Jesus definitely was getting the ball rolling with the crucifixion thing because that was why that's what he needed to do on Friday, and so he needed to get that thing going, and he was kind of doing that on Tuesday, as we'll see. So, anyways, let's just read the first section here that I have is Mark chapter 12, verse 1 through 12. And it says, "Then Jesus began teaching them with stories. A man planted a vineyard, built a wall around it, dug a pit for pressing out the grape juice, and built a lookout tower. Then he leased the vineyard to tenant farmers and moved to another country. At the time of the grape harvest, he sent one of his servants to collect his share of the crop. But the farmers grabbed the servant, beat him up, and sent him back empty-handed. The owner then sent another servant, but they insulted him and beat him over the head. The next servant he sent was killed. Others he sent were either beaten or killed, until there was only one left, his son, whom he loved dearly. The owner finally sent him, thinking, surely they will respect my son. But the tenant farmers said to one another, here comes the heir to the estate. Let's kill him and get the estate for ourselves. So they grabbed him and murdered him and threw his body out of the vineyard. What do you suppose the owner of the vineyard will do? Jesus asked. I'll tell you. He will come and kill those farmers and lease the vineyard to others. Didn't you ever read this in the scriptures? The stone that the builders rejected has now become the cornerstone. This is the Lord's doing, and it is wonderful to see. The religious leaders wanted to arrest Jesus because they realized he was telling the story against them. They were the wicked farmers, but they were afraid of the crowd, so they left him and went away. So this first section is emblematic of what is taking place on Tuesday, and that is, and we're not going to read all of them, but there's a series of parables that Jesus will share, and they're all basically directed at the Pharisees. And the Pharisees come and approach him, and you know, they don't exactly attack Jesus at this point, but they're definitely out to trip him up. They try to come up with a story or some question that's going to make him go, I can't answer that question or whatever. And Jesus is teaching maybe his last time in the temple, teaching as many people as possible. And while he's teaching in a huge crowd, the Pharisees show up, and Jesus tells them this story, which the Pharisees are smart enough to know that story is about us. And maybe not just even the Pharisees, but all the Jews. You see, remember, this parable is a great illustration, I think, of the history of Israel and how God has worked with them. See, God planted a vineyard. God planted a country, named it Israel. And then they continued to not worship God. They continued to reject God. He would send them prophets, just like in the parable where the owner would send them his servants to go collect what was his and you know, whatever. And they kept rejecting God's prophets, God's servants, and even beating them and killing them. That's how much they would reject him. And then finally, the owner says, you know what, I'll send my son. They have to respect him. God sends his son, Jesus, into the situation, and Israel and the Pharisees actually kill the son, thinking that they will then possess. Oh, let's kill the son, let's kick him out, let's throw his body out, and then we'll own the vineyard for ourselves. I mean, it's ludicrous to think that that's what's going to happen. And Jesus answers his own. What do you think the owner's going to do? What do you think God's going to do when you reject his son? Ultimately, he's going. I mean, Jesus doesn't mince words. Let me read it one more time. What do you suppose the owner of the vineyard will do? Jesus asked. I'll tell you what he'll do. He will come and kill those farmers and lease the vineyard. And then he says the stone. He quotes an Old Testament passage: "The stone that the builders rejected has now become the cornerstone. This is the Lord's doing, and it is wonderful to see." So, the reason the stone that the builders rejected will become the cornerstone. What is that talking about? It's talking about you and I. It's talking about the church. See, God established Israel, and He sent His servants. They wanted through Israel. They were to worship God, but they ultimately rejected the prophets. And this week, the Passion Week, on Friday, as a nation, they will reject Jesus as their Messiah. Abomination that causes desolation, in my opinion. And Jesus says the stone that the builders rejected, Israel, he's going to use that as the cornerstone of a new thing, of a new building, so to speak. And that is the church. That is us, believers in Jesus Christ. So the stone that the Jews rejected, being Jesus, is the one that we build our foundation, our church upon. And it's just kind of an amazing thought that Jesus had right at that moment in the parable. He's saying, this is the plan. This is what's going to happen. You're going to reject it, but there's going to be others who are going to receive it. And woe to you who rejected it, because the Father will come and kill those people who rejected it. And that's the ultimate destination of anyone who rejects the Messiah, Jesus, is ultimately death. And that's why the message of the gospel is so important. Whether you're a Jew or a Gentile, doesn't matter. I mean, for you don't even know what that whether it doesn't matter what race you are, doesn't matter what gender you are, doesn't matter. You need Jesus in your life, and that's what Jesus is telling these people, and they're rejecting it ultimately. If you drop down in chapter 12 all the way to verse 38, let me read really quickly here. Again, he just kind of goes toe to toe with the Pharisees. And it says, Jesus also taught, beware of these teachers of religious law, for they like to parade around in flowing robes and receive respectful greetings as they walk in the marketplace, and how they love the seats of honor in the synagogues and the head table at banquets. Yet they shamelessly cheat widows out of their property and then pretend to be pious by making long prayers in public. Because of this, they will be more severely punished. Basically, Jesus, through parables, goes after the Pharisees, but at the end of it, the end of his conversation, he doesn't mince words. He's like, you see those people over there? Don't be like them. Or do what they teach, but don't do as they do, so to speak. Because they're hypocrites. They like all of the prestige of being a Pharisee, but they don't like any of the sacrifice that comes with it. And I read stuff like that, and I take that to heart. I'm the follower. I'm a pastor. Right? I'm a youth pastor, associate pastor, right? And I'm not saying I'm the Pharisee, but they're the religious ones. And so for me, that's a warning to me. That's a shot across my bow, so to speak, because I, as Jesus was saying, basically, don't take the good without the bad, without the sacrifice. Don't do it for honor. Don't do it so that you're always, being respected, but be a pastor, a minister, a Pharisee, so to speak. A Pharisee shouldn't be a bad word, but it is because of the people who were the Pharisees. And so ultimately, not only as a Christian, but as a youth, as an associate pastor, I need to take that seriously, in that I need to make sure that I'm humble. I'm not doing things to get, attention or gratitude or whatever. I'm just simply a servant of the Lord. And if that means I have to sacrifice time, energy, talent, and treasure, as they say, the 3 T's, then so be it. But I can't be a hypocrite and tell you to sacrifice those things and then never do it myself. That is what would make me one of those Pharisee type people, is if I was teaching you to do something and not doing it myself. So that's a great reminder to me, and a great reminder to you as well. As a Christian, you're hopefully sharing the gospel with others, telling people that they need Jesus in their life, and then hopefully you're also living your life as one who needs Jesus and dependent on Jesus, rather than just saying to others you need it, but rejecting it kind of in your own heart or own life. So it's a great reminder for all Christians, but especially anybody in authority in the church. And I keep me, if Brian's on here, I challenge him, keep me honest. And I'll do the same with you. And the other thing is, like I said about the William Wallace thing, these are fighting words that Jesus is saying here, and he's getting that ball rolling. They hate his guts. They want to kill him because he's calling them out. And they know he's right. They know he's not lying. And so they're looking now for ways to kill him. Judas will eventually approach them and say, hey, I'll give him over to you. And they're like, all right, great idea. And then that's on Thursday night. Friday morning, they take him illegally, and they do what they do, and we'll talk about that on Thursday, Friday. But um, they hate his guts, probably because of what he said on Tuesday. They're really, really upset with him for saying these things and for him to call them out. If you drop down to verse 41 to 44, it says, Jesus sat down near the collection box in the temple and watched as the crowds dropped in their money. Many rich people put in large amounts. Then a poor widow came and dropped in 2 small coins. Jesus called his disciples to him and said, I tell you the truth. This poor widow has given more than all the others who are making contributions, for they gave a tiny part of their surplus. But she, poor as she is, has given everything she had to live on. If you ever are curious about giving and what it means to give financially to church, obviously as a teenager, you probably don't think about that. If you're an adult on here, you should think about that. I would say that this is the ultimate example to Christians on what it is to give. And it's amazing to me. I mean, I probably knew this, but it was a reminder, kind of like, oh, I didn't really kind of think that happened in Passion Week, where Jesus and the widow's mite thing happened then. Because, I mean, imagine Jesus in the middle of kicking off things. He knows in a few days he's getting crucified, and he's taking time to teach the crowds and his disciples an extremely valuable truth. At the same time, he's giving honor, glory, so to speak, to this widow, this older lady who drops in, as he said, everything she had. She just gave everything she had. Therefore, she's given more, even though it's like a few pennies. It's not that much. Jesus says, that's the most I've seen anyone give today. And the reason is because it was everything she had. That's a great understanding of how God sees what we give. If we ever think, oh, I gave this great amount. Our church is doing a building project, and some people pledge to give a lot more than others. But the reality is, God doesn't see the amount. He sees from your heart what you were willing to give. And then, like this widow, maybe it will say that person gave way more, even though it might be the lowest amount, because it was a lot more percentage wise of what they had. Maybe even they gave everything. And that to me is, because I'm not rich, I could never give as much money as, say, Bill Gates, who has billions of dollars. But I know that it isn't based on how much I actually give in the total amount. It's how much I'm giving towards the Lord's work from what I have. And it's never about the total, because God doesn't need our money. God owns everything. He's looking for us to sacrificially give, as this lady did. And it just, to me, is amazing. Another amazing thing about Jesus, that in his last week on earth before being crucified, he's giving some credit to this lady. I don't know if she noticed that he said this about her or not. I don't know. But to me, it's just amazing. And ultimately, that's kind of where I wanted to stick with those kind of 3 things. The parable about how the Jews and the Pharisees reject their Messiah, and so he goes to the Gentiles. He goes to the rest of us, and how the church is born out of that. That Jesus calls out the Pharisees, and then also calls out in a good way this older lady, this widow who gave everything she had. Great lessons for us. And the last thing, because we're again at the 18-minute mark here, the last thing that I would like to say is in about 50 days from now, not now, but then now, there's a thing called Pentecost. And Peter will get up, the apostle Peter will get up. So Jesus is crucified, he's resurrected on Sunday. For about 40 days, he hangs out with the disciples, and then he ascends into heaven. And then for 10 days, the disciples hang out and wait for the Holy Spirit to come down. And then on the 10th day of them waiting, or 50 days from Passover, which is about 50 days from that moment where Jesus is in the temple talking here, Peter will give a great sermon, and about 3,000 people, Jews, will get saved. Where do those people, was Peter that? Was he Billy Graham? Was he just an amazing speaker that these people were able to then just immediately go, hey, I trust in Jesus now? See, Jesus right now, especially on Tuesday, is preaching to the masses. Tons of people are in the temple. He's in the temple. He's teaching. they're impressed with him. The Pharisees come up and challenge him. They can see that the Pharisees are idiots compared to Jesus. And I think those 3,000, at least some of them, were those who Jesus was teaching in the temple on Tuesday of this week. And that it wasn't their time quite yet to get saved. For whatever reason, part of God's plan was they were going to hear the message from Jesus' own words from his mouth, but it was going to take a month or 50 days for them to really hear the gospel and then accept it and receive it. It's part of God's plan all along that those people, I'm sure that some of them are the same people that Jesus was teaching. And it's just great to think about how God has a plan. Maybe you come to youth group, maybe you hear the message of the gospel, but you're not quite ready to accept it. Well, I'm praying that someday, maybe 30 days, 50 days, or so down the road, it will be your time to accept it. And I'm encouraging you, obviously, that you don't wait any longer than you have to. But that's the point. Jesus was preaching on Tuesday of this Passion Week and not just sitting at home in Bethany, because those people needed to hear the message, even though they weren't going to accept it quite yet. They would soon. And so I want to encourage you guys to accept the gospel, accept Jesus as your Messiah if you haven't already. And if you have, I want you to use this week, maybe even this month, this time that we have where we're kind of all just chilling at home, to be more and more in love, to fall more and more in love with Jesus. There's nobody more deserving of our love than Jesus. And this week of all times is a great reminder of the sacrifice that Jesus made for us. The big one, and then even the small ones, where he doesn't even take time to just kind of chill out, knowing how bad things are going to get on Friday. He's like, no, I got to get up to the temple, and I got to share the gospel with those people, because someday, not that long from now, they are going to hear that message and receive it. So let's fall more in love with Jesus this week, and do so by just reading about what he did for us. Like I said, hopefully next Wednesday we can do the online youth group, because again, I want to do some more stuff than just devotional times on at noon, and really get a chance to talk to all of you. And I really hope that you're doing well. I'm praying for you. I know Brian's praying for you, and we hope we can see you soon physically. But until then, I guess see you right here on the YouTube channel and maybe on Zoom. With that, let's end this thing. And you stay classy, Victor.